the OI part and a lot of the burnout that we were talking yesterday the burnout factor for many physical therapists, if not most physical therapists, may be less the physical than the emotional burnout of dealing with the healthcare system the way that it's developed over the last 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And the increasing pressures where the regulations and the documentation that you have to do for Medicare and other insurance and the agencies that the government has gotten to check on practitioners and their documentation, and you can end up spending more time doing the documentation than you can in the actual treatment and working with patients. And that was always the biggest problem with me. And also basically healthcare facilities, hospitals, clinics associated with hospitals, where there was a push to turn it into an assembly line.
Yeah.
And since I'm dealing, the way that I work is very personal, and it was also, that was always the most stressful for me. So that's a big part of the OI, and I've managed now somehow. Since I'm working on building up my practice again, my physical therapy practice, and doing something with this integration that I've managed to put together and developing that. The challenge for me will be to find a way to work where, of course, your doctor, as a physical therapist, even when I see an Alexander Technique student, I have to, because I'm licensed through that, there's certain requirements that I need to keep that maybe other Alexander Technique teachers don't have. One is a basic documentation of what I've done, the session, what the person's problems are, if there's any kind of medical issues that need to be taken care of, that I need to refer them, etc., before I just do the educational part. So there's that, but that's all right. So my challenge will be to develop a practice where I feel like I can continue pursuing the path that I've been on and still make more of a living and be able to see more people as a physical therapist. So that'll be my challenge going into the next phase.
So what do physical therapy, Alexander Technique, and Alfred Korzybski have in common?
Well, me.
Yeah, these are the Holy Trinity of Kurdish's life.
The Holy Trinity?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go that far with any of them, but certainly they've been important aspects. And
so what do they have in common?
I think that if you read the Back Pain Solutions book, I put a lot of general semantics, I put a lot of Korzybski's work into that. And I see it as what general semantics, the Korzybskian version, because there are a lot of different versions.
Yeah.
But what Korzybski basically did with that was create a framework for the human sciences. And since both physical therapy and the Alexander Technique purport to be about practical disciplines based on knowledge about human beings to help human beings in relation to movement, the movement aspect of life, which is actually connected with all the other aspects of life, the emotional, the intellectual. You can't really separate any of those except verbally. And if you do it, and
let's walk this way.
If you have as much of a separation as many people have, then you end up with a lot of dilemmas that are not necessary, because you've got these separate compartments for things that are actually not things and that are actually not separate in the nonverbal world. So I think that what Korzybski's work, what the general semantics or what he called the non-Aristotelian viewpoint provides for me as a general framework for looking at a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
Physical therapy, Alexander technique, etc.
So, how did you make it through F.M. Alexander's books? They're not easy reading.
I made my way through because, well, he has a kind of ornate, elaborative, Edwardian style of prose with some very long sentences. And I don't mind long sentences all the time. I guess the main thing that got me through and read each of his books, plus there's a volume of articles and talks that somebody put out a few years ago, which is excellent. I was a teacher of a discipline or a school of thought that he founded, and if I was going to be an adequate teacher, then I had to have adequate familiarity with the basic literature of that discipline. So I just did what I needed to do, and I studied the books.
Did you read them once, or did you read them more than once?
I think I've read all of his books and the articles and papers more than once, at least twice or three times. So I have various versions, including Korzybski's. Korzybski read Alexander's works, and he usually marked up his books by just underlining and making various marks to indicate important aspects for him, and none of those books were marked up, but I'm sure at least he glanced through them, and he might have read them. And
can't imagine glancing through F.M. Alexander. It's kind of hard to take in much.
He was a polymath who developed methods he developed study methods that he used throughout his life that he taught to his students. And so he was able to I'm sure he was able to get the gist of Alexander's stuff. I don't know exactly. I've never seen any reference in his writings or his letters that I looked through, and I pretty much looked through all the available letters that Korzybski wrote. I never saw any reference to Alexander. That doesn't mean it's not there. But I know the books were in his library, and I saw the stamp, his name stamp on the front title page. So I know that he had some familiarity with it. And I don't know where I was going with that. But.
So was F.M. Alexander an original thinker, or did he primarily synthesize other people's ideas?
Yes, I think that's the case. I think he was an original thinker, and he also did a great deal of synthesis, perhaps not acknowledging some of those sources as some of us would wish. But I think that if you look at some of the other things that were being done in writings, he obviously read a lot. He read a lot of whatever the anatomy and physiology was at the time that he was active, and say the end of the 20th century, of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. And Jeroen Staring, who's a Dutch writer who's done a great deal of scholarly work looking into Alexander's background of sources, has really pointed to a lot of areas of commonality between what Alexander ended up teaching, or aspects of his teaching, and what other people had been teaching with elocution, methods of